Well, as we mark World No Tobacco Day, the Heart and Stroke Foundation has raised the alarm on how the tobacco industry actually focuses on young customers through its marketing. The global theme this year actually aims at exposing industry tactics on tobacco as well as nicotine products, including, of course, the very stylish vaping as well as e-cigarettes. And World No Tobacco Day is observed every year on the 31st of May in order to raise awareness about the harmful effects of tobacco use and to promote efforts that are aimed at protecting future generations from its health risks. And for this conversation, we've roped in Professor Lekan Ayo-Yusuf, who is the chairperson of the School of Health Systems and Public Health in the Faculty of Health Sciences right at the University of Pretoria. It's great to have you on the show today, Professor. Welcome. So quite an interesting theme, right, for this year's Day of No Tobacco, basically being a call to unmasking the actual appeal there, exposing industry tactics. Let's talk about these practices as well as tactics that need to be unmasked within this industry, Professor, especially here in South Africa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Indeed, it is well documented for many years, over many years, that the tobacco industry is only able to sell its products by making them more appealing to young people in particular, because once you are hooked on the nicotine, it's a lifelong addiction. And of course, the end result is that as you get older, you get sick and you die off. So the business can only be sustained by targeting young people. And part of those tactics include using flavors to mask the irritating effect of nicotine, for example, in your throat, or packaging the products in a very attractive packages like colors and using flavors like fruit flavors for them to smell very nice.
Very interesting point there, Professor, because we do have a serious problem as well of illicit tobacco trade in the country, with the black market there representing a substantial portion of the total market, mainly due, of course, to the failed border management systems as well as our low marking as well on the illicit trade environmental index. Yet seemingly not much effort is currently being done in order to address these challenges, Professor. So where do we even start the control of flow as well as supply and ultimately access as well as consumption of tobacco products?
Indeed, that's a very good question. And I think at this point, I'll take some time to just explain the illicit tobacco problem. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding, and as part of that, that's part of what needs to be unmasked by, we need to unmask, because that's what tobacco industry has done to mislead the public. Unlike many other illicit goods, most of the illicit cigarettes are not counterfeit. They are actually the real cigarettes that are manufactured by the tobacco manufacturers. Particularly in South Africa, 80% of those cigarettes are manufactured locally. So it's not coming from the borders. That's the mistake and the misleading statement. However, I have listened recently to one of the tobacco industry representative that has admitted that 80% of the cigarettes are manufactured locally. So the solution, therefore, is that we know where these illicit cigarettes are coming from. By the way, illicit cigarettes simply means the taxes were not paid. So it, for example, is about 22 Rand that you're supposed to pay on a pack of cigarettes. The tobacco industry is supposed to pay for every pack they produce, they pay 22 Rand to SARS. So if tobacco industry manufactures 10 packs and they declare only five of those will go into the market with taxes not paid, and they'll find their way cheap and make the access for young people and poor people much easier. So that's where the problem is. South African Revenue Service need to address the issue. Unfortunately, tobacco industry have also resisted the attempt to address this. If you remember, SARS was taken to court when they decided to put CCTV in the production rooms. And unfortunately, SARS lost that case on the issue of privacy. So this is where we need to be. The tobacco industry needs to come to the table and make sure, and SARS in particular and the South African Police Service needs to come to the table and make sure that they enforce the criminality and eliminate the criminality behind illicit.
So basically affect those regulations as per, of course, our judicial requirements there, Professor. I mean, you did touch also on a very key aspect as well of the tactics that were used or are used to lure young people when you actually first started addressing our conversation. Like, the issue of the industry enticing youth with products like your e-cigarettes as well as vapes almost to look like cool trends. Now, we saw when the actual advertisement as well as of tobacco products was actually banned from radio as well as TV, with the smoking banned in public spaces as well. So there has been quite a few initiatives to try and move specifically young people away from being able to access any tobacco products. But it seems like government is just, and those affecting authorities that you mentioned, namely SARS as well as police, are just failing. Because is it an issue of the magnitude of the problem is just too much, or they don't have adequate resources? What do you think?
Well, it's a combination of number of things. To be honest, there has been a lot of reports. A couple of years ago, there were publications on the problem within SARS, where the unit that was following through the illicit was actually disbanded. There's been a lot of coverage, about corruption and all of that during the Nugget Commission, if you remember the Nugget Commission, the Zondo Commission. So all these agencies that always have this problem. I'm hoping that, I heard a few weeks, last week, that the South African Revenue Service has been given more money to be able to enforce and prevent tax evasion. Coming back to some of these measures, because South Africa used to be the global benchmark for tobacco control, early 2000s, until this whole issue around illicit and corruption took over some of these agencies that would have otherwise been more effective. So particularly the issue around harm reduction and the confusion around harm reduction by bringing in e-cigarettes, heated tobacco, obli. Many people thought this were all harmless. In particular, obli, or the water pipe smoking. Many people thought this was just strawberry flavored and there's nothing wrong in having this vanilla smoke. However, they're actually tobacco. The same thing with e-cigarettes. You have them in your liquid, they're fruit flavored, but they have less of the toxins that you find in a smoke. That is true. However, they do have their own toxins. And when you heat strawberry, normally you can have a strawberry juice and you can chew it. But when you heat up strawberry, it turns to different chemicals. When you inhale it in your lungs, it's no more safe as you will normally have it when you ingest it. So this is some of the problems that are not told. Since 2018, the government has put forward a bill to try to claw back some of this and prevent some of these problems. But the tobacco industry has opposed this bill. And between 2018, when we had 9.5 million smokers, and now our latest survey shows 14.9 million smokers, we have 5 million more smokers because of this delay in passing the bill.
Very concerning indeed, Professor. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and I was just going to, bring that to attention as well as our viewers. I mean, this industry is somehow able to always circumvent regulations while continuously lobbying against any health measures that are actually, of course, aimed at reducing any tobacco use. So government needs a lot of groundwork as well as reforms should they need to get to the end of the scourge of this practice. Professor, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much.